We'll make it short and sweet. I know you guys are, just finished up your workout. Thank you for sticking around for some Transformational Thursday today. So last week I got a message from somebody who watches the videos, and they were saying how thankful I was to make me making these videos, and I got to give Thor props also because these don't happen without Thor. Yeah, Thor. So they said, your message is awesome. One thing that you might want to consider also is the idea of forgiveness, like forgiving yourself. And as soon as I read it, I would go, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And because immediately I'm trying to kind of defend where I'm at. Like, I know more than everybody else. But again, I have to kind of take a second to let my ego subside, let those thoughts subside, and actually see what this person is actually trying to do, and that's trying to help. They're trying to, maybe allow me to see things in another way that I wouldn't necessarily be able to see on my own. And it was amazing timing because up until that point, I was in a lot of resistance. I fall into pretty deep depressions, and on the opposite side, I get anxious about a lot of things, but definitely a deep depression for 2 weeks. And I know there's a pretty big stigma about depression. I don't try to, I think there's in other languages, they just say long sadness. They don't even have a word for depression. So it's, part of the process of life. You're going to have times where you're not feeling awesome all the time. And the more resistant you are to that, the deeper you get into your depression because you're just in want of not feeling that way anymore. So up until that point, I was trying to kind of just let things be and let things settle. And of course, life always gives you exactly what you need when you need it. And this message came through, and I said to myself, I forgive myself. And I immediately felt a shift in my mindset because that's something that I rarely do. Because I'm very judgmental about myself because it's gotten me pretty far, being very hard on yourself. If it's not perfect, it's not, acceptable. If you ain't first, you're last. These are things that we preach in society, and definitely I got it from not only, parents, but school, coaches, and you just indoctrinate yourself with this mindset, and it's very difficult to shake because then you make a mistake and all of a sudden you're regretful of that mistake. And, we judge ourselves for making these mistakes, and it's very easy for us to fall in that trap of, being very hard on ourselves and feeling guilty. And guilt is something that I've used for a very long time to serve me. Because what guilt does is guilt has done for me, it has pushed me to become better in some ways, but not for necessarily the right reasons. So, for instance, if I say, Dan, you didn't finish your last 3 reps, and he feels guilty about it, he might be, motivated to do those 3 reps. Because in his mind, if he doesn't do it, then he's, I'm judging him for not doing it, right? So that's how guilt can be a motivating factor. And that's one of the things that I always talk about in terms of motivation, that a lot of things can motivate you, but they're not really challenging you to become something new. That's what transformation is. Motivation is you being the same person and just kind of getting stuff. Transforming yourself is you have 3 reps left. What does that mean? What makes it, what am I trying to get out of this? What is this asking me to become? Right? So guilt is 3 people inside of you at once. The first person it is you doing the action. The second person is you realizing that action was not necessarily the outcome you wanted. And the third person that you are is judging the first person for doing that action. Okay? So you're getting mad at yourself for not knowing that was going to be the result. How is that useful whatsoever? It gives you the permission to beat the shit out of yourself. And that is not productive. But you may be saying to yourself, how do we grow then? Well, you're compassionate to yourself. You forgive yourself for making that mistake. And when you're in a position and a mindset of forgiveness, only then can you grow. Because if you're in a mindset of guilt, all you're going to do is perform actions that keep you in that mindset to prove to yourself you should feel guilty and judgmental of what you did. Whereas if you're in a position of forgiveness and compassion, then you can actually grow and say, wow, I did make a mistake. How can I grow to never do that again? That's where actual change comes from. It's not you beating the shit out of yourself and slapping yourself on the wrist every time you do it wrong. It's taking that second to say, you're okay. That's all right. Even though we've done this 1,000 times, even though every time I snatch it, I mess up every single time, that's okay. Because if you're continuing on that path, you're always going toward whatever it is you're supposed to be. The only time that you actually fail is when you quit, is when you stop and you say, this is over. That's it. That's the only time. If you're doing something, you're moving in that direction. And in life, I really believe this, the only time you stop growing is when you're in the ground. There is no end point. There is no check mark. Okay, great, I got this life figured out. There isn't. It's a constant moving current that pulls you forward. And sometimes you turn around, you try to fight against the current, even though you're flying, you're with it. And sometimes you're like, I'm just letting this thing go. And you're going to find in life, the times you let go of trying to grab onto things are the times you feel that flow and the energy of the universe, and everything just happens for you. Transformational Thursday for today. Thank you, guys. All right.